amendment. But I will say that what is the problem that we're seeking to address with this legislation? Is it to force ADA compliance, or is it to protect corporate culprits from liability by those who would assert that they have been denied access to public accommodations because of their disability? That's the real question. And another big question that I want to ask that has not been answered so far today is why, after almost 1/3 of a century that the ADA has been the rule of law in this country, why is there such profound nonconformance to the provisions of ADA that would compel my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to be so insistent on passing legislation that would clip the wings of those who seek to use the law to compel compliance? We have not had any answers to that basic fundamental question, and so I'll note that our dear president came to power attacking President Obama for being a Muslim from Africa. He then went on a tirade against the Latinos being rapists and drug dealers. He has gone after the Muslims. He went after women in his history with those access tapes. And he went after a disabled reporter during the campaign, mocked him. And so now here we have this legislation which is seeking to keep our disabled brothers and sisters from being able to enjoy public accommodations just like everyone else. You know, it is said that if you want to understand how someone else feels, then maybe put on their shoes, walk in their shoes. Well, I would say to maybe put a blindfold on and walk in that way, or maybe take a seat in a wheelchair and try to ambulate and try to enjoy what other citizens enjoy. And when we do that, we might catch a glimpse of how life is like by someone driving by. We've had a lot of talk about drive-by this and drive-by lawsuits, but what about a person who is disabled who's driving by, looking out of the windshield of their vehicle, trying to hunt down an access ramp at a shopping center, and there is none? What about railings for those who are disabled who need railings, and they see from the windshield of their car that there is inaccessibility, the conditions? And so it's been said during this hearing earlier that, well, the disability lobby is very powerful, and so no disabled person would just cry to themselves and move on. There would be some kind of complaint about it, and the property owner would do the right thing. Well, they haven't done the right thing in 30 years, and they're not going to do the right thing now. You know, it saddens me to know that there are people who still, to this day, don't have access to the facilities that we have access to. And it pains me to know that we're taking steps to try to cut their ability to gain access, when the only way you can do that is to get into somebody's pocket, get into a corporate wrongdoer's pocket by taking them to court. And what's so tragic about it is a lot of them just don't even worry. They just pay the nuisance value of the suit, and the condition remains. And so then they are subject to being hounded by lawyers with drive-by clients representing real people who are handicapped and trying to get relief not just for themselves, but for others. And we want to clip the rings of the lawyers. We're blaming the lawyers for bringing lawsuits. This is not a good deal for the American people. This is a bad deal. And we've had bad dealing in government, and it's affected the people of this country to the point where people are now distrustful of their government. Why? Because government doesn't work for them. It works for the rich and the powerful, but it doesn't work for them. This is another one of those pieces of legislation that will do just that. I can't support it. I can't, in good conscience, allow my voice to not be heard when it comes to standing up for the rights of the disabled people in this country who need a voice. I won't get any corporate contributions for taking this stand, but I'll feel good tonight going to bed knowing that I stood up for the little guy against the big guy. And with that, I'll yield back.
Mr. Chairman. What purpose does the gentlewoman from Alabama seek?